Shawn Connors is a 30-year veteran of workplace wellness communication and is the co-author of the popular ebook, New Perspectives in Wellness and Benefits Communication. He is a contrarian, I love that word, and creative thinker and sees workplace wellness approaching significant changes in the next few years. He recently authored a paper, A New Way to Wellness. Maybe it isn't a business strategy after all. Shawn and his wife, Joanne, rescue greyhounds, which I would assume means that you run really fast. The Hope Health dog in the logo is named after their late companion, Victor. Ah, Victor. That makes it such a special thing to look at that logo. So, without further ramblings, I give you Shawn Connors.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. I also will add that I am the best C+ student in the wellness business, and my father often referred to me as a Forrest Gump of wellness, so that'll give you a little bit of perspective. But one of the things that comes up a lot is on this title, A New Way to Wellness. Maybe it isn't a business strategy after all. I'm assuming some of you, if not most of you, probably are familiar with the LinkedIn group Wellness as a Business Strategy. So I was kind of poking a little bit of fun at that with this title, but I get a lot of questions. Why would you think wellness isn't a business strategy? And one thing I'll say to that is I have that 30-year perspective and that C+ perspective on the wellness business, and I have a different definition of wellness than what I often hear. I came up with my definition of wellness from Dr. Don Ardell, A-R-D-E-L-L. He wrote a book, this was 30 years ago, it was called 14 Steps to a Wellness Lifestyle, and buried in the middle of that book in the text, it wasn't even highlighted or anything, he had a definition for wellness, which I just loved, and I said, I'm going to use that definition of wellness until I find something better. And 30 years later, I'm still using the same definition. He said, wellness is fun, romantic, hip, sexy, and free. People who practice it are better looking, have higher morale, superior bowel movements, and more antibodies against disease. They also become wildly popular, tax exempt, and get elected to office. So I love that definition of wellness. I don't know about you, but to me that sounds a lot better than a colonoscopy. So I stay with that definition. Now going to the next slide. Excuse me. Getting to the next. This is our. This is pretty much what the wellness model is today. And one of the things that when you come up with wellness as a business strategy, I don't think it's a business strategy. I think wellness is more of a business procedure right now. We start with the health assessment and we go through the participation in the wellness programs, the health behavior change, health and productivity, and financial benefit. We like to use the words evidence-based, best practices. Those are the types of things as vendors, when you're presenting a wellness program to an employer, they want to hear those kind of things. If you vary from, now there are some ways you can vary from this a little bit, but for the most part, most of us as vendors in the wellness business are following this procedure in lockstep. It reminds me more of a checklist that a pilot would use to make sure the plane's going to be safe to fly than it is a strategy. To me, a strategy is required more in an environment where there's what I would refer to as creative destruction, and where old business models are in upheaval and businesses are going out of business at the same time new innovations are coming in. And then you need a strategy because you're in a highly competitive environment, and you can make the mistake of being destroyed by the creativity or taking advantage of it. You know, so I had a friend, we got in a discussion the other day, what would wellness be if Steve Jobs got involved in it? I don't think Steve Jobs would have followed this model that's in front of you. I think for all of you out there that are vendors, if Steve Jobs was in the wellness business, you would be out of business. or I would say, I'll include myself, we would be out of business because he wouldn't follow the rules here. And for all of you that are in workplaces interested in wellness, you would be delighted because it would be a lot easier. It wouldn't require a PhD to administer a wellness program, and you'd have more of that iPhone type of approach. So that's why I think wellness may need to be more than a business strategy. You know, if you told someone, the people that tell us to think out of the box, you know, you have to be careful what you ask for or what you wish for. Not too long ago, we had a client asking us to think out of the box, and I came back, well, let's get rid of the health risk appraisals, let's get rid of the incentives, let's get the wellness coaches serving us more as concierge than as coaches, and let's build this on a base of communication, you know. And in this particular instance, I don't think the client was ready for that. So I think that type of thinking is coming rapidly, but that's the kind of thing where it shows if you do try to break out of this mold, we're at a point in time, right, at least for right now, where you're going to get a lot of resistance to breaking out of that wellness model. Now, if we could get 1% of the population from high risk to low risk, we can say that the wellness program broke even or even gain. And to me, this is an easy argument. This is one of those things where you can say if we avoided one bypass surgery, or if we avoided one case of diabetes, I mean, the program will have paid for itself. The problem with that approach is businesses aren't in business to run wellness programs, so that, you know, we've kind of morphed into this area where we've positioned wellness, and that could be a whole nother webinar, but wellness has been positioned now as a cost center. It's in there to lower healthcare cost, and as a result, they want more justification that the program has paid for itself. So we get into these very complicated models of trying to demonstrate to people that we've avoided something that has never happened. And pretty much those are the health scientists, the MPHs and so forth that work for the different wellness vendors and wellness companies can come up with these ROI models, and they're very convincing. The problem I have with that is, and what I'd like to see at wellness conferences more, let's invite the underwriters and the actuaries, who I do believe are our silent critics. And I'd love to have them come and present at a wellness conference and tell us why we're all crazy. I would not necessarily agree with those people, but we need that type of discussion to find out where we can improve as an industry, and I just don't see that yet. You know, and this idea of avoiding something that's never happened, it can be a little bit subjective. You can make the statistics do what you want them to some extent. So it's a little bit suspect. I've been involved in situations where one end of the building, the wellness people are celebrating with the employer that they've got a 10 or 15 to $1 return on their wellness program, and the other end of the building, the broker is delivering a rate increase because of the claims experience. So, you know, we have these disconnects going on within the wellness industry. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something I think we need to talk about a little bit more. You know, and when we focus on cost, and one of the things I'd like to leave with you today is I know why we do focus on cost in the wellness business. Wellness Now's job is to lower healthcare costs. I think in the late 70s, early 80s, we had a better idea for wellness. And wellness could have morphed in a way that it was about a very positive culture at the workplace. It was about increased productivity and innovation and about a healthy workplace. You know, and today I go into workplaces where there's wellness programs, and they're intense, they're visible, there's people in your face all the time, they're big signs in the cafeteria about what's healthy to eat and what's not healthy to eat, and take the stairs, and it's just intense and a little bit unsustainable. It almost has a Stepford Wives feel to it, almost too perfect. And they're doing events all the time. I worry about burnout for the employees in those kind of programs, and 5, 6, 7 big events a year, or competitions, or things like that. There's a reason why the Olympics are every 4 years. Where I see sustainable wellness programs that we learn from, it's not that visible. It's there. I mean, employees are getting together and going for a walk at lunch. They're taking the stairs. The managers are active. There are resources for them to use, but it's just not as high profile. And I think that wellness should have gone more in that direction, and I think it will in the future. I think there's 4 key challenges exerting pressure on the existing workplace wellness practices. And I'm about to take you through a dark tunnel here. And we have, I think that wellness as it stands today, we've done a pretty good job over the last 30 years. I'm not anti-wellness, but I just want to see it progress now, and I want to see us change. And I think we're approaching that point where our current practices are untenable. So I want to go through and tell you why I think that. So this is kind of the bad news. We're going to go through the bad news first, and then I've got good news. One, we're incentive-oriented. Here's a little statistic. 36 employers not using incentives had equal to or less than 20% participation in a health risk appraisal. We have a saying here. A lot of times people don't want it, didn't ask for it, don't have time for it. So it's kind of like we're inventing a service. Say we're in a business class, and I say we're going to invent a service that people don't want, but we're going to pay them to use it. It's just a little bit. It gets a little bit complex when you have that kind of model. And I'm a big believer that if properly communicated, the benefits of health are so attractive that the incentives don't need to be as great as they are today. I think incentives are fine, but I like T-shirts and low-dollar gift cards, things like that. We're going to talk about peer-to-peer type awards in a few minutes here. But I think that the incentive culture is kind of coming to an end, and here's why I think that. One of the problems with wellness today is we have, if wellness has components to it, it has primary prevention, secondary prevention, and disease management. And I think so much of what we're doing in wellness today is in this screening and in treatment interventions. And in some respects, the participants in a wellness program at a company are starting to look like patients. So when you deal with patients, now you're moving into federal regulation territory, and patients have privacy rights. So what's beginning to happen is these different types of federal regulators are starting to look at wellness practices, particularly at the big companies. And I've got a list of a few of them here. And they're saying, wait a minute, these people have privacy rights. And when you use incentives in a way that's going to affect their benefits and things like that, it could be discriminatory. So you're going to see more and more regulation of wellness programs when we're participating in health risk appraisal data, claims data, any type of data mining. And I think this is going to get a lot more complicated and difficult than people think. I know there's already a lot of webinars out there on how to comply, how to make your wellness program comply. I just think the fact that we have webinars and seminars now on how to make sure your wellness program is in compliance is a bad sign. And I also hear these these debates going on, just a little bit of a side story about, if an employee isn't well, then maybe they should pay more for their benefits, or maybe we shouldn't hire them. I mean, after all, they're making voluntary choices that are more expensive for the rest of us. And you can hear this debate going on even in the popular media right now. But I think that's a little bravado, because here's what the problem is with incentives and privacy regulation. As we move from incenting for participation to incenting for outcomes or results, I think we're going to start meeting a lot of trial attorneys at our workplaces. If you were to say we should make those people that don't take care of themselves pay more for insurance, then you have to say that about the golden goose in the company. For example, if you're in a software security company and you've got the #1 counter-terrorist computer guy or gal on your staff, and they become invaluable to the systems and software you develop, give your business a competitive advantage. Or if you have one of the best engineers or one of the best sales marketing people on the planet, then you have to be willing to do this, treat them the same way you would treat anyone else. And often what we see is they want to talk that way about, let's make them pay more for their insurance, let's just not hire them, those kind of things. But they don't want to do that when it comes, an employer doesn't, not the wellness vendors, but the employer doesn't want to get rid of the most productive employees over their lifestyles. So I see that as a bit of a problem, kind of an acid test that you might be discriminating if you go down that path. The other part is commoditization, and this is where we're following that. We're moving in lockstep right now, and we're all doing everything the same. If you go to a wellness vendor's website, for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, 80%, they're all exactly alike. You could almost change the names of one wellness company with another, and nothing would change. They're all offering the same things. They try to drive a unique advantage, but at the end of the day, as a person in a workplace trying to make a decision, I'm pretty much looking at them being all the same. So the next thing that happens is everyone starts competing on price. And I think we've just started that process where you're going to see this per employee per year, per employee per month prices start falling considerably because I think wellness programs as they exist right now are commodities. And it's going to take a Steve Jobs type thing to break out of this mindset, or what I would say a Wright Brothers event. The Wright Brothers, at the time they invented powered heavier than air flight, the steam companies, the steam engine companies, were trying to come up with flying machines as well. And when these guys from a bicycle shop invented the wind tunnel, which that was the thing they needed, they invented the wind tunnel. They knew about wind resistance. They knew about building light materials. And they looked at an existing set of problems in a different perspective, in a creative way. And some aeronautic scientists today will tell you that the Wright brothers probably invented flight 10 or 20 years ahead of where it would have been invented without them and that unique combination of the way they looked at that problem. And in all of science and all of our technological progress, that may stand as a single exception, because usually changes in technology come in batches. For instance, Edison was only slightly ahead of a European in inventing the light bulb, and it's debatable whether the European wasn't first. But with the Wright brothers, they were so far ahead, but they looked at the problem from a whole different perspective, with a whole different skill set. And I think Steve Jobs is a little bit like that. And I think we're going to start seeing people enter our space, and if we don't adapt, they're going to make us irrelevant. So I challenge all of you to think, how can we get beyond being a commodity? Then we have the perception of failure. You can see the statistic here. The 3% of Americans only 3% practice all four of the basic lifestyle prescriptions. And I remember being at Healthy People 2000 when it was kicked off in 1990, how excited that was. I was there. I was at a table with a lot of people. I was listening to the government experts on health, and I was listening to private sector health experts, and it felt like finally, with the health observances and with Healthy People 2000, we're moving in the right direction. Well, 10 years went by, and there was a lot of publicity, a lot of good people involved in coming up with programs and stuff. And by the year 2000, we really didn't hit any of the objectives. But, good things take time. So back at 2000, we were getting ready for the 2010 Healthy People objectives. I hadn't given up my excitement and enthusiasm and thought this time we'll get it right. We really learned a lot of lessons over the past decade. Well, by the time 2010 came around, just on the issue of obesity, the nation didn't hit one single objective for putting obesity under control in the United States. So you think, well, a nation's a big thing. What states hit the national health objectives for obesity? And what is it? 15% for adults, 5% for kids, or something like that. And not one state hit the objective. So as the 30 years is going by, and I'm watching workplace wellness progress and get more and more refined, more and more scientific, the population in large is getting more unhealthy. So a lot of people will look at workplace wellness and say, it really doesn't work. The nation's a lot more unhealthy, and workplace wellness programs really aren't doing anything about that. And there's some truth and some untruth in that kind of a statement, but I think the gorilla in the room on this is we could get all the employees of all companies in the United States healthy and their spouses and wipe out any chronic disease on the horizon and have a perfect health story for a business. And do that with all the businesses in the United States, everybody. And Medicare and Medicaid populations are still going to bankrupt the country. So we're going to get into this in a little bit more detail, but we really have to move from, we really have to get the walls down in the workplaces and get the workplaces tied into the communities more. And as workplace wellness professionals, we got to stop selling this concept that wellness is an island on a workplace, because the tide is coming up. And your healthy people in your workplace will be needed to fund the unhealthy people that aren't in your workplace very soon. So we have to do something as a community to move, as a wellness community, to move entire communities more towards wellness. So that's the bad news. Now I think there's 4 trends that are coming up that will change workplace wellness, and that's the good news. So we might have some light at the end of the tunnel here. And I want you to know, now that we're through the cynical dark period, that I really am an optimistic kind of guy. This mass acceptance of social media that we're seeing, it's going to change. I think we're just at the beginning of this process where we now have mass acceptance of social media. The iPhones, the iPads, all those kind of things that we're now familiar with. This webinar, for instance, would seem unthinkable 5 or 10 years ago. And the next generation of people are accepting it more. So me being in my 50s, I'm trying to hang on. I'm excited about it. I think it's a positive change. But people in their 40s and their 30s and their 20s, it's just such part of their life. It's intertwined in everything they do, and we can see some of the negative and positive implications of the technology. But it's going to allow people to get face-to-face. So what we see for the next version of social media is we kind of see it like national or even international now, where there's communities online or virtual communities. And what we think is the next step of social media is going to start moving more towards local levels. even in some businesses within the confines of a workplace, they're using social media. They're starting to use tweet technology and Facebook technology for their benefits program and wellness programs. But I think you're going to see that in a community where the command and control structure we're now under is going to experience a horizontal type of growth. And you can, by using social media, expand into your whole community, integrate with other businesses, aggregate with other businesses in ways that I probably couldn't even imagine right now. But we think that's a positive development, and anytime you see social media being creatively used in wellness programs, I pay close attention to that. There's also interest in the environment. You know, attendance at national parks is up considerably. We intuitively know that the planet and our own well-being are intertwined, and I think there's a hunger to get back to thinking about the planet as being healthy, and thinking about our health in line with that. I mean, for instance, when we send out a calendar, we don't send out beautiful landscapes of parking lots. We send out beautiful landscapes of nature, and we are part of nature, and I think that's something where we're having a renaissance, kind of a blinding flash of the obvious that, you know, that kind of environment is worth preserving and it's worth participating in. There's a renewed focus on education, and we're going to move upstream and we're going to get the kids more involved. We're looking at lifetime learning as being more of a core value to a lot of people. And because we have a renewed focus on education, health is just entwined in that. I mean, you want to be a good scientist, you want to learn a new skill, but what good is that if you're really not healthy? And I think we're going to come up with ways in education, and any of you that are educators out there, where the well-being of the planet, the well-being of a family, the well-being of a company is more intertwined in the educational process and everything that we learn. And then we have demographics. This is where we start to feel our mortality. For instance, people that are the baby boomers are now playing the role of caregivers. We're starting to feel like maybe it's important I adopt a healthy lifestyle to avoid any disabilities that I can. ARP has reported that 84% of the people they survey want better health as they get older, and 74% of the people in ARP are going to be looking for new experiences. So, you know, there's an aging demographic that is rethinking what their relationship is with their personal health. And I think what's happening in that demographic, and I think it's an advantage, because this is the unhealthy demographic. This is your Medicare, Medicaid population that's going to start taxing the system, but they seem open to putting their personal health at a much higher priority than maybe when they have at any other time. And thankfully, the body is forgiving, and it's never too late to make a healthy choice. So I think we're going to have a receptive audience with this particular group of people. And, you know, on the other end, at 20s, 30s, 40s, I think what I just mentioned with social media, the 30 years of experience we have with wellness, I think the people coming up are going to be more aware of the value of wellness. They're going to be more demanding that it's part of a workplace culture, and they're going to be open to new ideas. So I see the changing demographics as a very popular development. So what has to happen in order for Americans to live healthier? I think if we can, we should put our focus more on primary prevention and think more in terms of lifestyles. For when I said earlier in the presentation, let's get rid of health risk appraisals, and let's change the role of coaches, and let's get rid of the big incentives. When you focus on lifestyles, you don't have those regulatory issues. Are there creative ways where we can start thinking about wellness more in a continuum? So on the left of the continuum, we have high-level wellness, the people that are doing all the proper lifestyle things. They've got energy, they sleep well, they eat well, they're a good example for everyone else. And they're on the far left, say in a blue area. And then you have a green area. And in the green area, we have people that are healthy. They could probably improve, but for the most part, they're healthy. And this would be the part where D. Eddington or Dean Witherspoon would say, keep healthy people healthy. And if we can keep those healthy people healthy, keep them from not going into the chronic disease category, then that's where wellness really needs to focus. So if you think of, if we could focus more on the blue and green, or the blue and green areas, and if you think of screening, now we're talking about blood pressure, colonoscopies, those type of activities, and if you think of disease management as a red category, if we could not eliminate the yellow and the red, obviously, but if we could focus more on the blue and the green, we would be, in essence, practicing prevention in our wellness practice. I think right now we're too medical-oriented. I do not trust a hospital to come up with the solution for getting America healthy. They are in the disease business and the business of identifying if we're at risk, identifying if we have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and trying to correct those things. It's more of a medical or family practice type of feel to it. And I think wellness has gone too far in that direction. In many cases, I see wellness programs at companies, and I just feel like it's like primary medical care, where we're screening for diseases and then treating the diseases, and we do a little bit of primary prevention on the side to give it some lip service. And I'd like to see that shift a lot more. I think we need to be more communications-based. I think most of you out there would agree that if we said communications are critical to a wellness or benefit program being successful at a workplace, I think most of you would agree with that statement. I think many of you would probably also agree that the state of communication is less than perfect. It has a great deal of room for improvement. Many times our messages are a hodgepodge. Many times there's multiple vendors bringing messages into a workplace. The people that are responsible for disseminating communication inside of a workplace are often overwhelmed and don't have time to have a communication plan put in place. In fact, it would be interesting to know out of 100 or out of the 100 people or so that are in on this webinar, how many of you actually have a written communication plan that powers your wellness and benefit programs? And that means, do you have a detailed editorial calendar? Those are the kinds of things that I think could get us thinking a little bit differently. Because if we can communicate well and we can really focus on the benefits of wellness, and a salesperson would say, let's start selling the hole instead of the drill. Instead of saying, sign up for your screening, get your blood checked, those kind of things. Let's start talking about looking good, having energy, those types of things. So a communication-based system, I think, can really help move wellness programs along. Wellness is a community concept. This is where I think we can take the walls down. This is in our own community, for example. We have Alfred E. Bike. It's a small bike shop right next door to our building here, and we have a wonderful rails to trail linear park that runs from Kalamazoo, which is 1 hour east of Lake Michigan, all the way to South Haven at Lake Michigan. And so you can get on your bike literally in Kalamazoo, almost downtown Kalamazoo, and ride to South Haven on Lake Michigan. Well, Alfred E. Bike has a number of programs that how to buy bikes and off-road and road bikes, and they'll get programs together, and they'll take people and prepare them to go on a one-day journey to Lake Michigan and back. Wonderful program. Why doesn't every employer in our community tap into that, have Alfred Bike at their workplaces and tap into that process? We have a restaurant in town, Food Dance. Wonderful chefs. They use all fresh foods, local produce. They have a program where they take groups of people down to the farmer's market and show them how to select fresh foods and how to prepare them, and they'll bring them back to the kitchen and they'll serve them the recipes. Wonderful program. And why aren't there chefs doing more workplace, being guests at workplaces? We have Gazelle, a small privately run athletic shop, and they've adopted the Girls on the Run program. For those of you familiar with that, that's a national program. They've got huge participation in that in Kalamazoo. Almost virtually anybody in Kalamazoo is aware of the Girls on Run program because Chris Crow and his people at that small business have done such a great job of promoting it. And you start thinking, well, right here in my own hometown, we also have Western Michigan University, a big, probably 40, 50,000 students, Kalamazoo College, Kalamazoo Valley Community College, each with experts and professors on communication, behavior, you name it. We've got them here in our university system, and they are eager and willing to be guest presenters to help us design and implement programs, to share their experience almost gratis, free. And it begins to become at least it's an awareness with me that within my own town of Kalamazoo, Michigan, within a 5-mile radius, there are more resources available to me as an employer than I could possibly find in a lifetime. And most of them are absolutely free. And almost all of them will come right into my work site and be part of helping me implement my wellness program. I see this as the greatest opportunity for us right now. This is where wellness has to go. It has to escape the silos of the business, and we have to grow it horizontally. So for those of you that are workplace wellness managers, I would encourage you to reach out to other workplaces in your community. And don't get too formal with it. I think sometimes we get too formal. Form committees, we go to the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, just call up your contemporary at another business and see if we can't share resources, if we can't combine our employees in one venue and tap into the professor at the university, the local small businesses that are doing things that are wellness-oriented. I've heard, this is a little bit of a side note, but I've heard some speakers in wellness kind of blame capitalism and the pursuit of profits for creating poor health in America. Well, there's some truth to that. But the other side of the coin is, if you take a positive attitude and you don't think in terms of enormous businesses, but you think of the small businesses that populate your community and those that are involved in a wellness concept in some way or another, and you tap those small businesses on a grassroots level, things get pretty exciting. Those people are passionate about what they do. So in that respect, I see small businesses and their form of capitalism more as an untapped asset of wellness that as soon as if you take one thing from this webinar, when you get off the phone today or Monday when you come back to work, call somebody else up in your community and just come up with one event or invite them in as a speaker. Watch what happens. I think we need to move to peer-to-peer recognition over big incentives. In wartime, the generals have learned over thousands of years of war the power of peer acknowledgement. You cover my flank. Who would you want to be in a foxhole with? And, soldiers will tell you when they come back from battle, as unfortunately so many of them are now, that they're over there for their friends and their team or their units. I mean, peer pressure can be positive, and it's probably the most powerful thing in influencing people to be better. You don't want to let somebody down. We don't want to let our parents down to some extent. We don't want to let our coworkers down. So there's kind of that, I don't want to create a negative for the people I work with. But we can turn all this into positive energy, and we can connect. We can have awards. I mean, it's no. One person told me that participating in a wellness program is the greatest thing that ever happened to him. Is his coworkers telling him how great he looked after he started to walk and lose a little bit of weight. I mean, that meant more to him than any amount of money you could give. It motivated him to keep on going. Just a small compliment to a coworker is more powerful than any of these huge incentives. And the other thing I think is that incentives don't need to be expensive. They can be inexpensive. They're designed to be fun. The best wellness program I ever saw was at Seattle Metro, and it was in the early 80s. And they were allowed to have a wellness program because they had a personality that wanted to run a wellness program, one of the volunteer employee. And they let him do it as long as he didn't use company time or spend any money, and in the company's money. And that guy got nearly 100% participation in that program through his personality. He was funny. It was almost like having Robin Williams in charge of the wellness program. And he got everybody walking, bus drivers and the garbage guys. I mean, everybody was participating in this thing. And then they had a great big event at the end, and the grand award for the most improved employee was a bunch of bananas, which tied into the concept a little bit. And to this day, I still think it's one of the best wellness programs I've ever seen. They had zero money, they used zero incentives, and it was all based on peer-to-peer recognition. So I think this is a big untapped area for wellness. Then we had talked about the children. I think we need to move upstream and engage the children. We've got to get the next generation moving, and I think the education concept is the right way to go. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to give you one example of how this manifests itself in practice. I'm familiar with a nature conservancy that has in Florida that has a program to help save tortoises or save the sea turtles that come out and lay their eggs on the beaches. This happens in about May, and we got to make sure the lights are off, you know, so that they don't go the wrong direction. They don't think it's the moon. So there's to be this enormous community effort to make sure that lights are off at this time. The Nature Conservancy volunteers find the eggs, document them on GPS, rope them off, and now they're getting kids involved, and they're teaching kids about sea turtles, and they're watching them come up on shore and lay their eggs. They have sea turtles, little sea turtles that they're trying to rehabilitate and grow. And you look at that, and the kids are getting outside. They're moving up and down the beach. They're interested in the sciences. They're curious about these creatures. So you see this intellectual curiosity combined with movement, and you see them move, and you see them learning in the laboratory of the environment. It's almost a picture-perfect example of what wellness should be. And I think if we aspire to those kind of images, and we include our children in those kind of activities, I think we're setting a foundation for a lifetime of wellness for them. So this is my secret formula to getting Americans more healthy. Kind of bounced around a little bit today with our beliefs and different ideas, but I just think that if we can take wellness and think of it differently, if we can move to the left of the continuum and really focus on wellness being something that is, I don't know, I look at it more as a privilege and a gift. I don't see it as a wellness strategy so much because I don't see it, you know, I'm also a business person, and I see business strategy as being something where you're producing a service or a product. It has to be highly efficient, has to be highly disciplined. But I see wellness as being more intuitive. I don't see it trapped in the walls of a workplace. And I see it more of a community-based type of existence. I also see it less intense, where it's sustainable, and we can continue it year in and year out because we don't get tired of it. So those are a few abstract thoughts about wellness. So I hope you found this useful. I'll be ready to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Great, Ken. That was really good and resonated certainly with me on a lot of different levels. And one of the questions, comments, whatever, is from Krishna. And Krishna, I'm going to unmute your microphone. Are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Great. Well, first, Shawn, thank you so much. This is completely energizing to hear this. And I just start off with one of the quotes I always use in presentations is also from Don Ardell, and it says, "It's very difficult to be well and focused on excellence in lifestyle if you can't express your talents and passions in some manner." So my question to you is, I have personally met with huge resistance with this kind of thinking. The concrete way is because something intuitive like this is often hard to produce that number that so much of wellness is demanded these days. How do you, what would be your suggestions in combating that kind of thinking?
And with this, what size workplace would this be for?
Well, in a variety of settings, just the mindset of this, there is so much push for the data-driven concept, and I've seen many employers get that glazed over look that they don't also know what to do, how to deal with it. And that's what you see, the response from them, but yet you see, whether it be the employers or other figures that have say on the decision-making process, keep pushing that.
Yeah, and I think this is, and we're at that inflection point right now, where when you do think creatively, you're going to be rejected a little bit. But it's coming the government is going to help change this. One of the things that a big employer especially needs to be aware of is, what are they thinking about the discriminatory aspects of putting people in classes? And it's not that I think that's a bad thing to do. I don't want anybody to mistake that. I just think what's happening is the wellness environment, as we move to participation to results, which is kind of the direction I hear what I would say the leaders in wellness are hinting at. I just see a big litigious environment developing. And keep in mind, this is being powered by organizations like the American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, American Cancer Society is pushing for those type of regulations from their representatives. And these are powerful organizations. ARP might be in there as well, I'm not sure, because it's their constituents that you want to discriminate against, basically, if you think about it. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So one is to say that some of these creative ideas are worth trying, because we can pilot test some of them now, and maybe the metrics you use to measure their success are the engagement in the programs. Might be, do they use the links? Do they go to the events? One aspect I think managers are completely open to is this idea of tying into the community more. So, and that kind of reframes everything, because now what you're talking about is it's a creative concept. It gives your business more exposure in the local community, so they're good corporate citizens. It makes sense to aggregate resources within a community. So one of the things I would do if I was you is to try to change gears and get away from the metric of ROI, especially with healthcare costs, and present a community-based concept and ask for pilot funding and pilot support. And I think you might be able to just change the discussion if you do that.
Great, thank you.
Great, Krista. Thanks for your contribution. Let's see. This is from Carrie. She says, it seems as though we need balance, creativity, and scientifically proven methodologies. For example, in schools, when we look at drug prevention, schools often use the DARE program, which is not shown to reduce drug use later or even improve students' perception of law enforcement. It's a balance key.
Okay. And you want me to respond to that?
Yeah, is balance the key?
No. I don't think balance is the key at all. I think if balance presents itself in a solution, I think that's fine. But one of the most creative, one of the types of programs that are getting kids most engaged is music. So what you'll see is, and there's been some stories on this, but you have a musician that gets the kids to join a band. They get learning an instrument. They participate in symphonies and things like this, and music becomes part of their artistic life. It becomes part of the way that those children express themselves. This is a solution that comes to us from the arts. It doesn't come from us from health science. And in some respects, I think a lot of the solutions to wellness to improve Americans' lifestyle are going to come more from the arts maybe than from science, and we have to be open to that. And the arts will not bring scientific solutions to the table. It's going to be intuitive. Think of think of one of your favorite songs or favorite musicians. A lot of times they write those melodies to satisfy themselves. There's a fire in them, and it's got to come out, a message in them, it's got to come out. And they do it in very creative ways that touch us spiritually. And I think we need to be open to that kind of approach in wellness. In fact, the word wellness, the whole concept of wellness, should invite artistic expression. And I think if sometimes the solution for a certain group of people is a totally artistic solution, I think that's fine. I think if it's a balanced solution using art and science, I think that's fine too. If it's a totally scientific solution, maybe for certain organizations that's okay. That's not my cup of tea because I think it's already too scientific. I don't think it's artistic enough. So that would be my comment to that observation.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, something you said reminded me. I had the opportunity to go downtown and sit at the chamber when they were talking about, healthcare reform and such, and I guess, naive me, there at the table was American Heart saying, no, we won't give on this. These are our people, as you said, that you're seeking, or at least in their opinion, seeking to discriminate against. So yeah, it's so.
Right, and I'm not advocating for that position at all, and I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong. I'm saying the reality is that's what's developing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just very surprised that it could be so, that some didn't see the greater good and really saw a lot of threat. So it was interesting. So, well, thank you, Shawn, so much.
Okay.
I think it was wonderful. Certainly a lot to think about, and I hope, as you suggested, everyone will go back to work on Monday and reach out to someone, doing something similar, and collaborate.
Yep. Well, thank you to everyone. It's been a privilege for me to talk with all of you, and I commend all of you on trying to make people healthier, and wish you the best of luck and greatest success.
Well said. Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you soon. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.